You ready?
Yeah.
5. A huge bummer as the U.S. men's national team is officially eliminated from World Cup 2022. A valiant effort in that second half, I thought. Some players maybe playing a little out of position, but Dutch better on the day. Denzel Dumfries with a game that will be remembered forever if you're a Dutch fan.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the way that he arrives on the back post, it was sort of emblematic of the U.S., I think, probably taking too much of an attack-based approach to the game. And, I mean, look, in the second half, you got to throw everything forward. So, I mean, there's no use defending. But I think in the first half in particular, they're very comfortable with the ball, but I think a lot of the defensive principles that got them to this point we didn't see in strong enough force today. And so, back post, I mean, that's fairly straightforward marking for either Tim Reeb or Anthony Robinson.
Yeah.
Robinson coming too close and leaving the wing back on marking.
Yeah, let's talk about the marking a little bit today, because it cost them the game ultimately. That goal right before halftime really was a game winner in all actuality. Marking let you down there. Anthony Robinson and Tim Reeb team up for some vintage Fulham marking.
Yeah, it looked like Fulham from 2020, not Fulham from 2022.
Not necessarily super organized for a team that had surrendered 0 goals throughout the group stage from run of play. What happened?
I think in the first half. So for me,
how do they catch you by surprise on set pieces?
Well, I mean, set pieces.
This always bothered me about Frank Lampard's Chelsea with zonal marking. Were we doing that?
Yeah. The U.S. is a zonal team, so I think so. I mean, realistically, that goal comes from just a regular cross in the run of play. I mean, that wasn't a corner. That was just
spectacular.
Right, it was just a cross that came in, and Denzel Dumfries has been the wing back on the weak side that has been the threat for the Netherlands for 3 years now. I remember he really broke out at last year's Euros, has been a really solid player for them. But I think in this game, in the overall, when you look at the bigger picture, you see the moments where the Netherlands take advantage of the U.S. tactics and frankly just have more quality. I thought, I mean, we'll talk about the performance of Denzel Dumfries, but for me, the performance of Memphis Depay was sensational today. Like every moment where it seemed like the U.S. were pressing and there's sort of, it funnels and funnels and funnels, and eventually you can go, 2 players go at Memphis and neither of them get the ball. Like, to me, the quality that the Dutch team has, we undersold it, frankly, and I frankly was wrong in the build-up to this game, because you see the quality all through that team, from back to front. You can tell their upbringing, you can tell it's an expression of who they are as a footballing nation. As a footballing nation, there are technical players with genuine quality to play out of pressure. Any one of them wants the ball. Any one of them wants the ball under pressure. And you can see how, when the moments that they got at the U.S., how they're able to, they absorb pressure. But once they got the ball and were going forward, the U.S. had a very hard time getting it off them, which has not been the case this World Cup. Their defensive pressure has been very good, and today it was down to the back line, and they were always on the back foot and caught on crosses and caught on cutbacks. Those defensive moments are really poor, but it really starts with the quality of the Dutch going from back to front and playing out of the U.S.'s desired pressure.
We mentioned, though, I'm going to give us a little bit of credit. We did highlight Denzel Dumfries, and we did say that Memphis is a type of player that can be streaky, hot and cold.
Either the best player or the worst player. He was kind of the best player for me.
He was fantastic. Dumfries was the best player on the pitch. Certain man of the match. Contributions to the 2 earlier goals before he scored himself. Matt Turner with a big-time save there. That was really impressive by him. I think he has that position locked down. We were worried about the center backs. We were feeling better entering this match. Now I'm a little concerned again. Probably an end of the era for Greg Berhalter. There's some reports out there that say he was stepping down no matter the result. Some people are already putting out tweets, Roberto Martinez time. I don't know if it's Roberto Martinez time. I don't know how.
He is Spanish, so it would be.
I don't know how excited I'd be for that, but we knew that the U.S. wasn't going to win this World Cup. We were super hopeful, given the opponent, given the run of form, that they could tap into something and advance and give you one more week of feel good. It didn't happen. Dutch undefeated, by the way, in this round. Never been sniped. U.S., I thought were in a good position to do it. Unfortunately for the U.S., they didn't put forth their best effort. I thought it was a really bad time to have the worst performance of the tournament.
And yet, So the thing that's really kind of frustrating for me is if you get overwhelmed by a higher level opposition, if you played Brazil and they just wipe you off the field, that's one thing. I just feel like this game was lost in moments, not in patterns of play. If you look at the overall balance of performance, I thought it was pretty even, if not slightly tilted towards the U.S., and that's what hurts here, is that the U.S., I thought, did a lot of what they wanted to do, particularly with the ball. They created good chances. I thought early in that second half, Tim Ream has a chance from a corner. He just can't make clean contact to get it beyond Noppert, who we should give credit to was very good in the Netherlands goal. Haji Wright.
Yeah, he made some plays outside of the box, coming out of play.
Yeah, the sweeper keeper moment was huge. And Haji Wright came on. The ball was basically passed to him.
Cagazo!
Right, I mean, the goal was certainly a cagazo, but the chance that he had to get him behind where, the ball is basically passed to him, he tries to round the keeper instead of finishing first time. In some ways, the hulking presence of the goalkeeper, that's where you feel it, because he tries to go around him rather than just hit it first time, and he makes a mistake there to not finish. And then, there was plenty of crossing moments. And you compare the service of Dumfries to the service of the U.S. wide players, whether it was Reina, Aronson, Musa, even Dest. The service in wide areas wasn't good enough.
We were flat-footed on those crosses, too. It was just it's a little puzzling. For us to be not a direct team, for us to be a team that's dependent on service from out wide, we don't have a roster built for that. We don't have superior crosses, and we don't have superior aerial players. So I'm really kind of confused at how this team is built. I think our strengths are in more direct play, ball at the feet. Even Gio Reyna today, while he had some good moments, he had some really bad moments today. He was being asked, Taylor Twellman made the observation, you're asking Gio Reyna to play with his back towards goal. That's not what any of us really wanted to see from him entering this tournament. There was a moment there where Pulisic, Aronson, and Gio Reyna were all sharing the pitch. Something to be encouraged by. We're seeing live scenes right now from Qatar, and we're seeing players being dejected, and hopefully they can use this as fuel. Look, in terms of what your expectations were for this team entering this tournament, I'd say we give them a passing grade. This is a big B+.
Yeah, it was par. I mean, par sounds harsh, but it was.
I would say it's better than par because they were in a tough group.
Yeah, that's fair.
Therein lies an achievement.
Yeah, I mean, you didn't lose in the group stage. You didn't lose to England, one of the best teams in the world. But the reason why I say par is because we're heading towards a home World Cup, and this World Cup was sort of meant to introduce that squad to sort of the American public. The American public is going to recognize a lot of these guys in 3.5 years' time, but ultimately the U.S. at that tournament are going to have to do something that they've really never done before, which is rise above what is par, which is get out of your group and give a good game to a team that is the group winner on the other side of the bracket. The U.S. is going to, if they're going to get to a quarterfinal or a semifinal, or heaven forbid win the thing, they're going to have to rise to a level that, frankly, I would like entering the day, you allow yourself to believe that they can reach.
Yes.
And honestly,
we were talking about the talent on the pitch. There wasn't this huge discrepancy,
correct,
Chris. In terms of talent in the knockout stage, it's just as good as I've felt.
Yeah.
You really, over the embarrassment of missing out on the last World Cup, you did address the talent disparity between you and even CONCACAF.
Yeah.
Forget the rest of the world. We entered this game going position for position, and this was pretty much a toss-up.
Yeah, and I think the specific qualities of the Dutch allowed them to win this game, but you see the remarkable athleticism. You kind of wonder if this wasn't sort of such a COVID-congested, packed time where you have to play World Cup games every 4 days because we got to fit this thing in as quickly as possible. Maybe with more rest, the U.S. can do better at the next tournament in between games. But again, I just wish that you could have seen a bit more on this day. At 2-1, you allow yourself to believe, and you wish you would have seen more in the first half when they had the chance to score in the second minute. They had another chance in the 8th minute. At 1-0 down, they were creating. Like, you just wish that there was sort of the breakthrough moment here. Ultimately, what I yearn for as an American soccer fan is that breakthrough moment. We haven't had it yet. I mean, 2002 was such a different
for
time.
The men's side.
Right, exactly. It is worth noting that the women obviously do it every freaking time. But on the men's side,
I felt like the breakthrough moment for us was Tim Howard's performance against Belgium.
Yeah, but ultimately in a loss.
But then we did nothing with it.
Right, exactly.
How difficult is it to mourn with Lil Uzi Vert blasting in your?
Yeah, I mean, just the whole setup. It's hard to mourn. It's hard to. I'm trying to make like profound points. It just feels weird right now. But to me, like again, there was a moment here. The U.S. were not like outclassed. I don't think they were outclassed today.
No,
and that's the thing that sort of hurts a little bit. Is they were in this game.
Final score is not necessarily reflective of the two teams on the pitch. However, I do think it was reflective on the day. By the way, congratulations for nailing your 3-1 that you gave away at halftime.
At halftime, yeah.
Both teams just go. It took a cagazo, but you got it. I don't think this is a very good Dutch team, and that's kind of discouraging.
Well, I mean, we'll find out.
This was their best performance by
far
in the World Cup, and they're obviously pumped. I don't blame them. They go into the next round. We'll see what happens with Australia and Argentina. I think most of us anticipate what's going to happen there. We'll preview that game towards the tail end of this show. But let's say on now a transition period, building up to this home World Cup. The U.S. in all likelihood is going to move on from Greg Berhalter. What type of manager would you like to see? What type of identity would you like to see from this U.S. men's national team?
I mean, not one that's necessarily...
Please agree with me. Please.
What? Be defensive and attacking? No. They've already taken the step. They've got talent now. It's about improving what they're doing. I actually think that they were on the right track here at this World Cup. The performances that we saw were very good. Look, if you want to sort of adjust it slightly, I think, I don't think he'd leave his current position, but I think Jesse Marsch is someone where not even necessarily the specifics of him and what he does, but the tactic of using your athleticism and using these crop of players to go at teams and forward press and be more coordinated and better about winning the ball in the areas. I think for as much as the U.S. press, they didn't win the ball enough to create transition moments that ultimately resulted in good goal-scoring chances. So you want to see more of that.
And they have the midfield to turn something out of nothing.
Correct.
In terms of just tackling and having loose balls fall at the right player's feet. Jesse Marsch's quotes on international football kind of would lead you to believe he's not that into it. However, if given the opportunity, I don't think he can turn it down.
He's the current manager of a Premier League team, so I don't know if he would leave that position now.
He seems far more fascinated by the club game.
Right, and by the way, I think Berhalter is kind of the same. I wonder how frustrated he's been to sort of only really have like 8 days to prepare for the tournament.
Let's disregard his club bona fides. I don't necessarily...
Right, I mean...
They pale in comparison to Jesse Marsch.
Right. He's not managing in Europe. What I'm saying is, like, it's a specific job, right? Managing a national team is a specific job where you have to work against the circumstances of really coaching. You don't get to coach that much.
Right.
You're sort of managing your pool for a long time. So if you're asking me, what's to come? I think it's about developing a little bit from a defensive point of view, going proactive into the attack. It's really about building a system around Gio Reyna to thrive as a number 10, and how do you sort of have again, how do you find the space for him to be in the middle of the field when McKennie, Moose, and Adams all earn their keep at this World Cup? How do you build a system around Gio Reyna, providing the chances? He's going to be the player in the next 4 years that, for me, takes the biggest leap forward. It's about finding center backs that are better with the ball. Tim Ream was a great Band-Aid for this tournament, but I would not be surprised if he's played his last game in a U.S. shirt. He was a great hired gun for this tournament, and it was great to have him, but it's time for Chris Richards and, frankly, other American defenders that we don't really know about yet to step up, because I don't think we're going to see a lot of Walker Zimmerman, maybe in the near term, but in 4 years' time.
CCV's probably.
CCV will be up there, but you got to find more center backs for sure. I think
we can upgrade over the fullbacks too.
Yeah, I think if Robinson,
we haven't been able to have a fullback that you can trust.
I think Dest for sure at right back is going to carry on. Joe Scally behind him is sort of the next in line. He's playing in Germany. I think you can do better at left back for as much as Robinson did with his running. But yeah, I think you want more. You want to kind of see what the Dutch have. I find them aspirational in this game, which is no matter what moment in the field they are in, they will play out of the pressure. And actually, I thought the U.S. mostly did that at this tournament, but that's the next step, is finding the number 9 and finding more players that are comfortable playing out of pressure, because really, for as much as we talked about the U.S. style and how I liked it at this tournament, it only kind of suited their very best players. The second they had to go to the bench and find more, there's no one else who can play like that. You have to completely adapt.
Strong disagree. It didn't suit their very best players because we barely saw their very best players in the attacking sense. We saw Christian Pulisic. He had a good World Cup. He was good today, even though this was arguably his worst game of the World Cup. If you look, I captained him in DraftKings, a cruise. But we didn't see enough Gio Reyna. We didn't see enough Brendan Aronson for my liking. We can certainly do a lot better at the number 9 position. That needs to be addressed. Certainly in this match, the Dutch matched your total for goals output for the entire tournament. Not good enough if you want to be able to make noise even in your own qualifying region. We have the Gold Cup in this region. There's Nations League. They're CONCACAF tournaments. This isn't the end. I know if you're a casual fan and you're turning on to the sport because it's a sports equinox and it's something for you to watch before college football. There's a lot more to the international game than just this big tournament. It's not just turn your TV off and turn it back on in 3.5 years. There's going to be a lot being done with this team over the course of the next 3.5 years. They don't have to deal with World Cup qualifying in the conventional sense because they host. So in many respects, this is where Germany rebooted their team in record fashion. They made the final in 2002, and they had to totally reboot their team. I'm not comparing us to Germany, but in 4 years, they introduced new blood. They didn't have to deal with World Cup qualifiers, and they went in as a cohesive unit with a very clear plan, and they made a deep run in that tournament. We're hopeful that the U.S. can make an even deeper run than Germany did in 2006 before eventually getting ousted by Alessandro Del Piero and the Italians. For the U.S. to move on, they need to unlock better options. I've been here pounding the table for Ricardo Pepi. Ricardo Pepi should make the World Cup roster in 3.5 years, given his trajectory, but he should not be the first name on the team sheet. There should be a better striker option. There should be better fullback options. Midfield's looking pretty good, but you and I have gone back and forth at what is McKinney really good at? And the answer was, his energy is good. That's not good enough for me. He needs to be better. I know he came in carrying a knock. He was the least impressive out of that 3, the MMA midfield that many people were talking about. He was the weakest link.
Yeah, I think probably looking forward, you'd say McKennie or Musa and Adams are sort of the base, and then you can try and get Reyna on there. But yeah, I think McKennie in this game didn't really add a ton. I think we saw a couple of switches from him.
A decent chance.
Right, yeah, he had a couple of decent opportunities where he got forward and created, but I don't think he was brilliant in this game, and he didn't come in great form either. He had picked up an injury at U.S.A, and so he wasn't at his very best, but I still thought gave an incredibly valiant effort and provided a lot of good qualities. But I think, again, it's about development. It's about how does this group of players, 6 or 7 of which will be the anchors of your team come the next World Cup, how do they grow? And also, how do we see MLS grow in that period, not just in terms of like as a league that has quality, but as a league that can export American players abroad? A lot of what we've seen is MLS taking the current crop of players and sending them to Europe because the development is getting so much better. Gio Reyna played at NYCFC, and Tyler Adams played for the Red Bulls, and on and on and on. You see,
played for the Union.
Right, Weston McKennie came through at FC Dallas. A couple of Union players have come through. Brendan Aronson's brother is going to Europe now in this fall window. How in the next 2 years? Because that's really about the amount of time you have to find new players that are young. In the next 2 years, who are the players that emerge? Is it Cade Cowell, who's a young prospect in San Jose, who's a real physical presence that could potentially go to Europe? Where is that next group?
Gaga Slolina is a
Slolina
player that
for
could
sure.
push.
In goal, I think you look at the Under-20 World Cup, there's a lot of promising young players at that tournament that are qualifying. By the way, in 2 years' time, the U.S. will be playing in the Olympics, which could be a valuable time for some young players to get more experience.
Yeah, a tournament that we haven't really been able to use.
Right,
recent
exactly.
generations.
We haven't played since, 08 in the Summer Olympics? It's been embarrassing that we haven't qualified. So I think the Under-20 World Cup and the Olympics and development, you want to see, I think this team is about 14 deep of high-quality players. You want to see 20, 22 players that can step on the field and do a job for the U.S. in these big moments and continue to evolve the style and have those players grow.
Here's what I would really like to see from the U.S. Soccer Federation. You're hosting. Go for it. Make a splash. I think splash. I think Roberto Martinez, in terms of marquee names, he has a pretty good record with Belgium. Obviously, left on a sour note. Probably overstayed his welcome over there.
Premier League background.
This is a 3.5-year job, and who can take it next level? I really want to see a hard-nosed marquee name take over this and kind of break down. This team may be feeling themselves. It's a different generation that you have to connect to if you're the manager. Greg Berhalter, I think you can certainly accuse him of struggling to connect with certain players. He's not that personality type. He's not this raw, fiery leader that people have to rally around. I kind of feel like the moments and the players themselves have to generate that motivation. Berhalter was a good phase. He got the assignment done. But now I really feel like you need a hard-nosed, defensive-minded manager that can light a fire under these players and have some more creative roster selection.
So what are you thinking?
Well, he's not going to be available. I always kind of circle 2026. He's had a career resurgence over in Roma. But I always thought Jose Mourinho has flirted with the notion of the international game. Unfortunately, he's now on an upward swing.
And he'd probably manage his native Portugal, I would imagine.
Yeah, Portugal would be it just didn't work out with timing. I think we're headed towards Roberto Martinez. I think he's been planting those seeds for over a decade, quite honestly. And
since 2014, since he joined the U.S.A. World Cup broadcast.
Kind of feels a lot like the introduction to Jurgen Klinsmann after his time was on with the German national team. We were all primed and ready for that name. And Klinsmann did some good things. He did some bad things, but he was the right guy for the time. I think right now, Roberto Martinez from a serious program who's won trophies with Wigan.
By the way, he doesn't bring the style that you want.
No.
It's a completely different style.
No. He's malleable, though. He's played different styles when he's overmatched. Look, he plays a different style because he had a golden generation at Belgium. We've seen Roberto Martinez.
But at Wigan, when he was managing a team that were sort of always fighting against relegation, they tried to play. They didn't bunker their way to staying up.
I remember their FA Cup run. They just by the very nature of some of the teams that were going up against, they didn't have a lot of possession. He does not play the style, but I think that's a marquee name that you certainly have to watch out for. Jesse Marsch is certainly another one of these names. I think you look towards South America. I think you look towards some of these more stingy European sides.
I have a crazy one. I've been thinking about this for a while.
Let me hear it.
Gareth Southgate. Because
his time is probably up.
Because I can't imagine that after this World Cup with England, that he's going to go manage a high-level Premier League team.
That's very.
He has a lot of respect for the American program.
I've got another totally crazy one.
Yeah, left field. Go for it.
Carlo Ancelotti.
Wow. The thing though is he's another one that Everton, Carlo Ancelotti, you can see it, but I mean he's the manager of the defending Champions League side.
This is one of those that the Winter World Cup really kind of puts you in a precarious situation if you want to identify your next manager, because a lot of your targets, if you're going to look towards the club game, they're in mid-season right now. You almost have to put pause on your search and wait for the dust to settle of the club seasons. I think you're going to have much better options when that happens. But I would really like to see the U.S. go for a big cult of personality. And I would like to see, it doesn't necessarily, yes, I am more inclined to go defensive, counterattacking just because of the nature of the international game. But I really want a big-time personality, and they've had that in the past. Jurgen Klinsmann was certainly a dominating personality, just wasn't the right type. I really want to see the U.S. Soccer Federation think outside the box with this hire, because for better or worse, World Cup's coming in 3.5 years. It's go time. It's time. This team has to go for it. This team, this federation has to approach the next World Cup like they're going all out to win it. The goal isn't, let's get to the knockout stages. The goal isn't, let's get to the quarterfinal. We'll be all right with the semifinal, but the goal is, as ridiculous as it sounds, coming off a 3-1 defeat, is you have to win that.
Have to?
Well, that's the mentality.
Right, yeah.
That's the mentality.
You have to be thinking about winning.
The mentality entering this World Cup was, can we get out of the group stage? That's what it was. No one was talking World Cup.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds ridiculous, but the mentality has to be, let's go as deep as possible.
Depending on what the format is, 7 home games, right? Like that's your goal, is to win 7 home games. And how can you go about doing that, and can you set forward an ambitious enough project? I mean, they've had a long time to think about it. They've known they've been hosting for a while now. I think this tournament was a step to at least getting back to where they were, but I mean, you look at their last 3 World Cups that they participated in. 2010, won 1 game, out in the round of 16. 2014, won 1 game, out in the round of 16. 22, won 1 game, out in the round of 16. Again, it's why today was frustrating, because against Ghana, there were times that they were outclassed in 2010. Against Belgium, for as much as we talk about the Wando miss, they were destroyed by Belgium on that day. Yeah. Destroyed by Belgium on that day.
We've had a debate. There's a difference between setting out defensively and just being lucky.
Right, exactly.
And surviving.
Right, which is what happened. So, to me, I think this tournament was a step because you went about it differently. It wasn't hanging on for dear life, but ultimately, it's the same outcome. It's the same outcome. So
the only time this entire tournament that I was like, holy shit, how are we going to do this, was against England.
Yeah,
and they navigated
and in the last
game.
kind of 20 minutes against Iran, when you're sort of hanging on. Right?
I mean, that's just a World Cup. That's World Cup happening. But feeling overmatched, like, where are the answers here? Yeah. And they actually navigated that situation far more deftly than they navigated today.
Yeah. So, I don't think that they were overmatched today. I don't think that. I think it's a step in the right direction, but it's kind of hard to argue that when, again, the outcome is exactly the same. So how do you, again, like you're saying, with either a cult of personality or from within the group, say to yourself and to the team, we can do more, when you've not proven it for a very long time? They haven't made a quarterfinal in 20 years. How do you find that sense of we belong here when all these footballing nations that are here now, Brazil, Argentina, England, Portugal, Germany, Spain, they're gonna have a strong team in 4 years. It's not like those countries are falling off. You still have to reach their level again. And ultimately, I think the U.S. is probably a generation away from winning the World Cup. And I know that sucks to say, but honestly, Mike, like, you've kind of put forward your vision of like what gets you up for being a U.S. soccer fan. For me, it's that struggle. People will sort of like have a go at me and say, well, how do you root for a team that sucks? And honestly, it's the fact that the United States of America, for the most part, when they try at a sport, they win at that sport. The U.S. do well in the Olympic Games at a bunch of sports. But this one is impossible for the U.S. because ultimately it is the sport in other countries. You are generations behind. It doesn't mean the same. It means something right now, but it doesn't mean everything on a day-to-day basis like in other countries, where every day they play this sport, and every day it's the most important thing, and it leads sports headlines, it leads sports radio stations and podcasts. They live and breathe this sport. That's not the case in this country.
Look at your opponent today. They've never won it.
Right, exactly. And it means everything to them. And they're the 3 times runners-up. 8 countries have won this World Cup. It's freaking hard. It is hard to catch up. And the U.S. can throw as much money as they want, and they've got an Apple television deal for MLS now, and clubs are valued at 700 and 800 million, and a business infrastructure is grown around this sport. But you still cannot overcome the passion and the caring that other top footballing nations have for this sport without a severe concerted effort over generations. And that's the struggle that I love. And we'll see if in 26 they can bridge the gap to some of these countries, maybe that second tier of favorites. Maybe you're not going to be better than Brazil, but you can be better than the Netherlands in 4 years. But ultimately, it is that struggle. It's the difficulty in this sport that I love about it, and it's why I will watch when they play away in Grenada in the Nations League. I love this shit. I love the struggle of being a U.S. men's national team fan.
Well said, Witty, and I think suck is harsh because they won 2 trophies last summer.
Right. I mean,
you have your own region. It's not World Cup or bust.
It's suck relative to like Brazil.
Well, suck relative to Netherlands today.
Right, and it's also suck relative to like people expect when they turn on a television and see an international sporting event and it says U.S.A, the standard of our country is that we win, right? We win no matter what. And so when you win 1 out of 4 games, people are like, well, you suck. I don't think that they do. I think they get better, and I see steps. I get defeated when it's the same outcome for 12 years now. If anything, there was one World Cup in the middle you don't even participate in, you don't even get to it, and go out in the round of 16. It's the same outcome. In some ways, that quinto partido, the Mexico trope of not being able to get to that level that you think you should be at, the U.S. is heading there.
Yeah. No, I think they certainly are. Let me throw one more name at you.
Yeah.
Joachim Low.
You know what? That's a really good call. I like that a lot because he's another one who just sort of ran his course with the country that he was at. Joachim Low, I think, is a really good shout because he's, again, someone who seems like he's a national team coach. There are national team coaches and there are club coaches. He seems like a national team coach. I think that's a genuinely good shout.
Plus, we get the
right, exactly. We get the memes and the gifs.
And that's really what's most important. Let's preview before we get out of here. We won't be with you tomorrow. It's a Sunday. We'll be back live on Monday, but there are games to preview, including one coming later today. Messi and Argentina, they turn around from that abysmal performance against Saudi Arabia, that national embarrassment, a national holiday for Saudi Arabia, who ended up getting bounced in the group stages. Argentina, a dream opponent for them against an Australia team that has been in this stage before. Granted, in 06, they were far more talented. They're going to be feisty. Lecky's had a good tournament. There's moments there. They're going to set up to defend. I'm curious to see what kind of lineup Argentina comes out with.
Yeah.
But frankly, I don't think it very much matters. However, counterpoint is, has Argentina in this tournament given you that much reason to trust that they can just take care of business?
I think in that last game, they did what they had to do. I think it's mostly do what you have to do sort of team. And I think that's probably where they will be heading into this game. But the goal for Australia is to make them feel the weight of the pressure. That's the goal, is how do you make Argentina 0-0 at halftime, 0-0 after 60 minutes, and get frustrated and take shots from long range and do a lot of the, frankly, dumb things that they can do sometimes when they get into high-pressure situations. Can you put that on them, or are you just going to get run over? I think the more likely scenario is they just get run over. We know that they've found some answers in the group stage. The question about whether or not you play Lautaro Martinez up top or Alvarez again is a big question, but Enzo Fernandez will play in the middle. He was very good in the group stage. You know that Messi can run the show and put on some brilliant performances. He's played well at this World Cup. So you have to feel confident in Argentina, but if it goes wrong, it's because Australia are making them feel the weight of this moment. Every game going forward after they've lost the first one, they've not been able to have an easy ride. It's been all high stress and high volatility from a country that lives and breathes this thing in sort of the manner that I just said that the U.S. doesn't really.
Yeah, make Argentina feel the weight of the shirt. Make them feel the weight of the moment. Try to slow the game down. Shithousery, milk every second. This should be a game that has 8 minutes added on at the end of every half. If Australia wants any shot at taking this to pens, because in run of play, granted it's a funny sport, funny things can happen, but I think we both favor Argentina to move on, and it sets up nicely for them. I wish it was the United States taking on Argentina to be able to revel in that victory for a week, and then it's basically a big fat A+ mission accomplished. But I think the Dutch is another opponent, although they look better today, and I can't wait to rewatch this game and really analyze the Dutch perspective of it to see if they have a shot to snipe Argentina. Tomorrow, there's some really interesting games, and finally, hopefully, we get Poland out of our lives.
Yes, it is time for Poland to leave this World Cup. It is long past due for Poland to leave this World Cup. Yeah, so they'll play France tomorrow. England will play Senegal.
That's an interesting game.
Yes, I agree. I was just going to say that. I will say, in rewatching the group stage, and particularly their performance against the Netherlands, I don't think that Senegal were fantastic. But again, it's another weight of the shirt moment. I was listening to the Guardian Football Weekly, and they were kind of talking about how the English pundits are sort of overlooking Senegal a little bit.
No, they are. Not a little bit. They are.
Right. They're looking towards, all right, we got to play France, and they're having conversations about whether or not Kyle Walker is the right pick to deal with Kylian Mbappe. Like, they're already doing that. So are you overlooking a team that shouldn't be overlooked? And that ultimately is kind of the story of the next 2 days. Even for the Netherlands, honestly, the Netherlands will think that based off their tradition that they are better than the U.S. We shouldn't overlook them. We should respect them a great deal. They, I think, paid a great deal of respect to the U.S. They frankly played against the ball for most of the game, and yet they were so relentlessly solid at it, they were able to get through. And so I think looking forward now for France, for Argentina, and for England as well, it's can you not overlook your next opponent. We talked to the underdogs yesterday, and they were saying the gap is too big between the favorites and the underdogs to really back them. So I think you're probably looking at a scratch Netherlands, Argentina, England, and France quarterfinal, which would be amazing. But of the 3 teams that are left, you definitely favor Senegal as the one most likely to get something.
Yeah, I think Senegal can. If we were trying to amplify the intangibles, maybe Australia can hang around and make it interesting just by their style of play. But if any team in these next 3 matches has an opportunity to play spoiler, I would fancy Senegal in that respect. Still, my super dog, and yours probably, considering the U.S. is out, is probably Japan.
Yeah, specifically because of how they played against favorites and how they played against the bigger teams. They struggled.
It's the right time to catch Croatia, too.
Right, exactly. And maybe Croatia will play a little bit more against the ball and sort of there are certain teams where no matter who they're playing, they're going to want to have the ball and want to break you down. And those are the teams that Japan will thrive against. Croatia could occasionally be a bit more pragmatic. They played against the ball a little bit in the World Cup semifinal against England 4 years ago, and ultimately couldn't get through to beat France in that final. But we've seen them employ a certain kind of tactic against teams that maybe it suits them to be against the ball. So that'll be interesting. Do you go out to dominate that game, or do you basically say to Japan, hey, go beat us, we know you can?
Yeah, we want to thank the crew that helped us out here at Bottle Blonde and the kind people over here at Bottle Blonde. This is the end of our run for U.S. men's national team. I certainly want to do the broadcast on Monday. I may very well be here for the Brazilian game because it seems like a party, especially for Brazil matches. So we may have a later start for that. I haven't even talked to you. That's me trying to schedule it. But we've had an incredible support system over here. I'd also like to personally thank the Mimosa Tower and the Tower of Miller Lite. They really helped me get through this morning. I'm very excited to come back for other big-time U.S. soccer matches. The American Outlaws present an incredible atmosphere, and Bottle Blonde has been terrific. So thank you very much to them and our Metal Art team. Again, for you, the viewer, watching us right now, check out Good Rivals, watch a history of the U.S.-Mexican soccer rivalry in the men's game, available on Amazon Prime Video, and a potpourri of soccer-centric podcasts, including, I was looking at the numbers, that God Bless Football, the Group of Death episode is one of the biggest Metal Art it's ever put out.
Yeah, there were a couple ones over the Thanksgiving break that you just see them go, wow, okay. So fair play to the God Bless Football team. They're previewing this one. I was listening to it on the way here, and I wanted to throw my phone out of the car, which I think is the point. That's mission accomplished for them.
We know it's coming, and it still finds a way to happen.
It still triggers every time. So definitely check out God Bless Football. Definitely check out After the Whistle with Brendan Hunt and Rebecca Lowe. They'll keep going. Actually, we should say we're going to keep going. Just because we've been doing a very U.S.-centric show for the first 2 weeks of the
end of our U.S. run, but we're going to keep going with this morally abhorrent World Cup.
After basically every game except for the one tomorrow, because it's a Sunday, but quarterfinal, rest of the round of 16, semifinal, and the final. We'll be doing post-game shows right here on the Le Batard and Friends YouTube channel. Football with Grant Wall, check it out. Most important thing with Ashlyn Harris and Ali Krieger. Cooligan still going strong, so we will still have you covered during this World Cup, even though the U.S. are out.
All right, we will see you soon. And one last time, they did us proud. They got to the knockout stages. It was for a good hot minute.
Yeah,
it was really frisky.
Oh, the
2-1 after
the
that
1-0
cagazo of a goal.
Yes.
I was feeling like, put it on frame. Crazy things can happen.
I grabbed our Nicaraguan friend Joel and I said, 20 minutes to get a goal. 20 minutes to get a goal. Unfortunately, that 20 minutes was taken by the Netherlands.
He always has Norm Chadomir, though, on to college basketball this season for our Nicaraguan friend Joel. All right, we're going to be wrapping up here. Thank you guys so much for supporting us. We'll be with you, with the exception of tomorrow, the rest of the way forward. And thanks a lot to Metal Art for making this happen. It's been a dream assignment. I've enjoyed putting on the soccer cleats with you one more time and doing some soccer content. So thanks so much for the people watching along live. We'll be with you on Monday.